Hello and welcome back. In this short lecture, we're going to learn about how to do the autopilot in hybrid environment. To begin with this, we have few of the configuration items to be fulfilled to get the success when we try to do the autopilot in hybrid environment. The first one would be you need to install the Intune connector in your Active Directory or wherever you have the Active Directory, so that it's going to sync up and it's going to establish the connection with your Microsoft Intune server. And the next one would be you need to grant permissions on your OU, wherever you have the OU. On that specific OU, you need to grant a permissions for one of the domain join accounts. Say, let's say you can create an account called Intune Connector example and grant that permissions to that account. And next one would be you need to create a
Thank you for watching in YouTube. These are the free content which I have published over my experience. And if you're looking for a full-fledged training content, you can visit the link which I mentioned in the description, and you can purchase the courses which are very less price, which are selling since the direct link is already applied. And I hope these trainings will be useful for you, and you can go for full-fledged training content. You can watch here the free content which I'm publishing. I'm going to publish on Microsoft Azure and SCCM, Intune, PowerShell, and different other technologies altogether. I'm going to publish it, not just the Microsoft, also the AWS and Google and different products. You can check out in my Udemy courses which are offering. You can simply click on the link which is mentioned in the description. Thank you.
one of the profile configuration from the device configurations, which is nothing but one of the profile. In fact, we did cover this topic in the device configuration specific section for the AD join specific profile configuration, so that to be fulfilled. Once we have done that, you can import a specific machine, and to do the your testing, it should work like as anything. So let's do all these steps so that you'll know that you know what we are trying to do it now. So the first one would be I'm going to install Active Directory connected. Before that, I wanted to make sure that I wanted to show you that there is no AD connect which I have set it up. So I just wanted, because if you could remember that in the previous demos I did work completely with the AD sync, but in this specific demo I wanted to show you that without AD connect also it can work. That's what the one of the goal which I wanted to show you. So in this situation, you can check out here from the Active Directory. If I go to Azure Active Directory and AD connect options, there will not be any kind of sync up within this. AD connect was not set up. You can check out if I just click on AD connect, the page is loading quite slow, but ultimately they should show me as its disabled state and nothing has been configured here. If it was configured, you would be getting as a sync on and all the metrics will be populated there. And this is my domain controller which I'm trying to browse here, so that I don't need to switch here and there, and I can simply show you especially for the portal side. And post to this, I just have to go to Microsoft device enrollment. In this section, I wanted to show you that Windows enrollment, especially for the auto enrollment option, should be automatically configured, or it should be already present for you, so that any of the device which is added to Azure AD will automatically joins to Intune. That's how the configuration should be there. So this is the configuration. You should be enabling this. So once you have this configuration, you can if it's not that, you can configure, or you can choose even some and add that specific AD group, but in our case it's all. And then I'm going to create here in Active Directory one of the OU and then a user account. So let's begin with the user account. This is my Active Directory, which is omniu.com in this case. And simply I'm creating here a user account. It's a general user account. It doesn't require any specific permissions to it's a domain user account ultimately for the technical. So I'm just giving as the Intune connector as the username, so that I can easily identify this is this specific account is used for the Intune connected. So once I have configured, or once I have created the specific user account, I'm going to create one of the OU, and on top of it I can grant the required permissions. In fact, these are these specific OU I'm going to give it in the when I'm trying to configure device management specific profile configuration. So that's how I'm going to do it now. For now, I would say that let's create an OU, and then simply just call it as the some kind of demo, or the just for demo, and then a delegation should be granted. So this is the OU. If at all I give it in my device configuration path, I can use it, but just configuring here as the autopilot demo, and here I'm adding that account which I just configured, and choose here the next radio button, and computer object specific read and delete and create and delete is the permissions which you need to select it. So you need to select that specific to the that should be the computer object. It should be the computer object, and then the two checkboxes, one for the create and delete, should have the permission. So this is how you're gonna granting the permission for the delegation specific. So that's it. Additional settings are required. Click on next and finish, or the grant here the full checkboxes with the full permission. This is the ultimately you need to have that permissions. Once you have these permissions, this specific account can add the computers or on-premises machines can join in that specific OU. That's how it's going to configure. So now let's actually oh oops, I don't have internet, looks like proper. So I'll just switch back to backup link, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to install the Intune connector for Active Directory. So this is a connector which I need to install on that specific machine. So let's click on that Intune connector and click on add button, and then this is the connector which is gonna sync up with your Active Directory. So the first step would be the documentation specific. In fact, I read that. The second step would be the connector. I need to download that Intune connector. So in fact, I read the documentation, so I'm just following for the second step, which I need to download the Intune connector. This might take some time to download in your case also. So once it is downloaded, you can run the setup. So it's going to be fully automated setup. In fact, with the simple clicks like this, Intune connector for Active Directory. Once it is installed, it's going to ask me to sign up with my permissions to sync up with the account. So in my case, the MADI account, which I'm going to choose so that I have the full permission. So here I can simply say configure, and then it's going to ask me to sign in. This is where I need to give the user ID of my permission. So in this case, I have already signed in. So I'm just entering here the password. So once the password is entered, I should be able to log in, and it's gonna sync up. So there is an additional, there will not be anything. You can see here it's a success, and everything is gonna set up for you. So it's done. There's no additional configuration is required at this point of time with the specific to Intune connector for Active Directory. That's a simple configuration. Once you set it up, this it's gonna simply sync up with your AD, that is nothing but your LDAP, and whatever the permissions you have granted for that specific OU, you might have to give that specific OU path in the device configuration profile for Windows 10, which we are gonna do it in the next 1 or 2 minutes or so. So in my case, if I don't want to use that, in this case, it's just one more time I'm showing you that it's already done. Everything is and automatically downloads and install updates. There's no action is required from your end. That's what I'm trying to say here. Now if I just refresh, it should actually come up here with a green option, or I'm just going back and come back so that I can show you here as active, and it's cool. Actually, everything is properly set. Now it's time to go back to the profile creation for the autopilot. So let's jump into device enrollment and go to Windows enrollment, and this is where you have the enrollment profile as well as the device profile, which is the deployment profile to be created here. So I'm just giving here for the deployment profile as the hybrid, and I'm not selecting here as no. I'm sorry, I'm not selecting as yes because I don't have something to set it up for the co-management at this point of time. So I'm just choosing as the no. So if the devices are already available within your another database, you can consider as yes, but in this case it's going to be a one machine, so I'm not going to configure as yes. So let's jump into click on next. So that would actually gives me option for either deployment type or deployment mode. In other way is user driven or self deployment. So as I explained in the last two different demos, we need to select here as a user driven because the demo is for user driven with hybrid join AD join. So let's select that and come back to the here you need to select here as the it's going to be joined into Azure AD or hybrid. So in this case hybrid Azure AD, so that you're gonna select it, and remaining things like the terms and conditions, all of other settings. And if you see here, the computer naming template has been automatically disabled. The reason being is for this specific one, when you're working on a hybrid environment, the computer naming would be decided by your device configuration profile, which we are going to set up in the next maybe in another 3 or 4 or 5 minutes or so of that specific setting. So once we try to set up there, the computer name would be configuring that specific configuration, not here. That's why it's getting grayed out the specific configuration. Otherwise the other settings are very default, like profile and account type, hiding the accounting options and proxy settings, all privacy, sorry, that's a privacy settings, and all other configurations are quite same. And scope options I'm just leaving as default, and make sure that everything is proper. And now in the assignment section, you need to give a specific AD group. In this case, if you have any of the hybrid specific one, you can give it or you can review once again. These are the specific settings, whether you wanted to do it like autopilot mode for the white globe. I'm not selecting. All that has been created. Now as next step, I can re-review one more time if I want, and if you can look at here, the assignment also not yet assigned. So in another step, I'm going to actually create an account, and then I would be adding the group. So before doing that, I'm actually importing here the hardware ID which I have already taken out of my test machine. So this is a hardware ID which I have generated from one of my test machine, and as you know that the generation of the hardware ID, which I have already explained in the user driven mode with the Azure AD, that's a simple steps, and you can follow that. So once you have that file, you can come back to the space, autopilot devices space, and then simply import. So this might take 10 to 15 minutes or so. Once the device is completely imported, you would be getting as devices imported, and then you can refresh and assign that specific device to any of the user. So in our case, I'm going to re-import actual device also one more time, but before this is just the explanation side. So I did have already one of the AD group. If you can look at here, if it's not there as a hybrid, so I'm just going to create here hybrid deployment, so that this specific AD group I wanted to target to my auto pilot profile for the hybrid. So I'm just adding here that this is a specific compute has been added. This is a 73. I'm gonna soon input one more computer also, so that also have to be added, but this is just the a test case. So I'm just showing how to add that specific machine. So here I'm just going back to the device management, device enrollment, and if you can see here, it's showing is one devices without the profile. So I can go back to the profile, and the profile is not yet assigned because there's no there's no devices here, so whatever the devices are targeted with the specific profile, it's gonna list here. So in our case, this does not have anything. The reason being, there is no even target of any targets for this specific profile, autopilot profile, which is a hybrid case. So I'm gonna target now with that specific AD group, which we just created as a hybrid autopilot specific one. So I'm just editing the assignment, and I'll select that specific group here by selecting hybrid configuration, which is a hybrid demo, and then I can review and save, and click on save. That would actually save this specific one. And if I just refresh my autopilot deployment, I should be having here as yes now, and then the devices are now I should be able to assign to the specific user. For example, if I want to assign for maybe Chris Dan, I can select one of the user and simply assign it. That's how it's going to work. So in this case, I'm just assigning for Dan, but either way, I'm gonna assign for the Chris for other purpose. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna actually import it just now with another one, and it is not assigned, so I'm going to assign for a user called Chris here. Select it. So in the background, what I've done is I have also added the specific computer to that specific AD group also, because the steps remains the same. And if you can see here, the assigned profile is completely not assigned. So in a minute or so, it's going to assign. The status will always change from assigning to assigned. So to get that, it might take some time, but you might have to wait here. It's still not assigned any of the profile for this Chris user device. So it might take a few minutes. So I need to wait maybe 4-5 minutes. Once that's done, I should be able to start my test VM, and then I should be able to build it. So in this case, I'm going to create now a profile in the meantime. So this profile is required to create to automatically join in your Active Directory the specific machine. You need to give the input as what is the AD, what is your Active Directory domain name, and what is your OU, and computer name format. All these three key information. Out of that, computer name and the domain name is the mandatory, and OU path is optional. So any of these values you must have to provide to Microsoft Intune in the configuration of the device configuration. So let me actually show you here by giving some of the name. So I'm going to give here a meaningful name like domain join, and then it should be Windows 10 or later. So in this case, Windows 10 or later, and here I should be able to select the profile type is it should be the join AD join specific. So I need to choose here AD join, which should be here. That's a domain join. And as I said here, these are the three key parameters. What would happen is actually this specific setting will be enforced once the machine is started into the autopilot mode. It will actually look for the compliance policies and the policy configurations. During that time, it would actually check, hey, do I have anything for the joining into my on-premises? Also, it will verify, and this profile configuration should be available already. You should be configured as a mandatory in your Intune configuration. So if you have that configuration, it will download and it will join the computer based on this specific configuration. When I say specific configuration, for example, the computer name. So I wanted to give here the computer name as PC hyphen. So that's going to be a mandatory name as the PC hyphen, and then it's gonna give the as a random name like that. Whatever the random name. So that's what I'm going to give. You can read here the specific settings. So what it's showing as information. So I'm just giving here as the PC hyphen. So it's going to give after hyphen the required name would be randomly generated for me. And coming back to the domain name, I need to give here as a mandatory domain name. So in this case, omnio.com, and the organization name is the optional, which you can give out like your DS equivalent your OU name, and then DS equivalent your domain name, .com, whatever it is. So that's how you're going to give. And once you have configure all these specific settings, you can click on create. In fact, there's nothing in the rule specific. If you want to, you can check out here applicable rules or nothing. So let's create. So once you I can give the proper description like domain joining specific profile or something like that and create. This is going to create the complete profile, but it's not yet assigned. So its best recommendation would be you need to assign the specific profile to the target of the same devices that you have targeted for auto profile specific one. So that's where we are going to configure here, like autopilot specific hybrid configuration what we have done. So for that specific AD group, I'm going to give it here. So this autopilot AD group as well as this domain join group, or both the profiles or both of the configurations will have the same AD group, so there will not be any confusion when it is trying to configure. So that's why I'm actually choosing here hybrid AD specific joining group. And post to that you can see here I'm actually in the background resetting my PC, which was imported just now. So these are the fast forwarded steps, like selecting the regional and keyboard and clicking on next, it's gonna actually, this is where it's gonna download the autopilot. You have some important setup, that means it's actually pulling out from the autopilot those are the specific settings. Like this is the very important screen. If you can look at here, the welcome to Omnio, which is the organization name, it is automatically populated. And also if you can look at here, enter the password for the Dan. So this specific account is configured for Dan. That's how it was imported. So now it's just asking for that specific password. So this is very interesting that in the user driven mode, automatically it will populate, it will give you your company brand and logo information and the specific user information also hard coded. So as a user, what he is going to do is he's going to actually enter the password. That's the experience for the end user. So to talk about that specific slide, if you can remember, the end user's experience is selecting the region, language, and any keyboard. And now he's going to actually feels that, hey, this is my device because I can see my company name, and now the username is already populated for me as an end user. All I have to do is I have to just enter the password. So once you enter the password, actually it's gonna look for the domain join configuration. For that it's gonna download that specific profile which we just configured in the last maybe 3-4 minutes back. So let's just click on next this, and it might take again a few more minutes at this point of time because of the profile has to be downloaded and the other configurations to be validated from the Microsoft side. So it's just setting up. Please wait for a while. And if you can look at here, I'm just trying to refresh because the computer I did granted the permissions for the computer's OU also in the background, and I'm just refreshing because this specific OU, because we did not specify the OU name actually. That's why it's going to join into the computer's OU, and I need to grant the permissions as a delegation permissions there. So it might in fact it's going to come here as the PC-a random name. It should be populated at any point of time, but before populating that, when you add any machine to the domain, it's required to reboot. So that's what it's going to happen in a minute or so on my target machine, which is still running in the background. It says that we'll continue setting up again after the reboot. Just a moment, it's still going on. Looks like it may come up anytime the reboot. Looks like it's doing all the autopilot specific configuration in the background. It's downloading all that specific configuration. So I'm just looking at, yeah, it's just restarted. If you can look at here. So now post to the reboot again, if at all. It's in fact it's just created the computer account automatically, PC hyphen so and so this account. As a next step, what I can do is I can show you in the AD also specific if you want, and in the members we did actually given the PC hyphen that, so that's why it's showing, and empty is the OU path, so that's why it's not joined in any of the given OU. It's the default computer's OU or container or whatever the computer thing, it's just added there. And if you see in the all devices, it's still not evaluated any of the policies, because it's still coming up. And in the Azure AD specific, it will be in a green, but for the MDM specific, it's not at complaint, or because of the policies are not yet downloaded. It's just starting the mission at this point of time, so it would definitely take some more time. So in a minute or so, it's again doing one more reboot, looks like. Post to that, I should be able to log into that specific mission with my on-premises account. Maybe I can create one of the account, maybe call a test account or something like that, just to show you whether it's added and I'm able to log in with that specific account or not. It's taking some time, so maybe I can create in a minute or so. These are the options. So this is very easy. In fact, if you can look at post to the reboot, it's going to come up, and this is what the autopilot specific configuration, which is going to come up here. And it says that all the phases should be completed, including the device setup and the account setup. So in the account setup, it's gonna verify your applications and other configurations, and once you have done the compliance policies, everything is ready for that specific machine, then you should be able to log in with the account which you're going to create within your on-premises account. So let's create that specific account which I'm talking. See, it's just finished that, and I'm at log on screen. Now you can check out here. Omnio.com is also showing in the sign in to is the domain name which is showing up. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create here an account called test accounts. Like right click and then fill the first name, last name, whatever it is, the logon name and the password. And I don't want to save in the next log on, so just create it and entering that username and password. If I'm able to log in, that's okay. So that's how it's going to work. Simple. I'm able to log in. So this is all about the on-premises hybrid environment autopilot case. I hope this is useful for you. Thank you for watching this.